And welcome to another episode of Love Learns. We're back again with a Love is Blind episode. As you know, we're reviewing the US season as well. We finished with the UK season, so we're moving on to the US season now, which is still showing. So at the moment, I've only watched up to episode 11. So the couple I'm going to be speaking about didn't make it to the dress fittings or the suit fitting, so that's why I've kind of brought it up, but there might be more information on the reunion, so we'll see how that goes. But for now, I think we have enough information about their relationship and based on the first 11 episodes and why they ended. So this couple are Monica and Steven. I went back to watch their episodes and there was a lot on these guys that was framed from the beginning that like you just would have picked up until you knew the ending. For example, in their first ever episode, we see Monica and Steven talking about their previous relationships, how things were. We see a lot of the times Steven was doing most of the talking, and Monica was asking questions and he would do a lot of talking. This also could be editing. As I say, every week when I'm doing these Love is Blind episodes, we don't see the whole picture, guys. We only see like an hour in each episode when these guys have been together for 4 weeks. We also don't see behind the scenes of things. I don't know these guys personally, so all I'm going to be talking about is what we know about the couples based on what has been shown in the episodes. So in the very first date that they have, they talk about their first dates, which we find out that Steven had cheated on his ex, and the last relationship he was in was 2 years. He cheated on her because he felt like she was too good for him. And I think his history was repeating itself in this season with Monica, which I don't think he recognized it in the pods, but when he came out of the pods and they were doing the experience together, I think that was the same thing that was happening. He had come to, he acknowledged in the first ever date the different types of cheating, and how it's on a spectrum. For some people, it's if you're sleeping with someone, if you're physical with someone. With some people, it's if you're emotionally invested in someone. So he knew that there was a spectrum, and confessed that he had cheated on his ex emotionally. There was nothing physical, but it was emotional, and it was because he felt less than and that she was too good for him. He also disclosed that he goes to therapy, he went to therapy after finding this out with his partner, but they ended up breaking up, but he's still in therapy. Again, going back to the Harry video that I did on Perfect Match series, these kinds of conversations around therapy can be used as a bandage, and for Steven, I think he used it as a bandage in this circumstance. It was kind of like, I've done this bad thing, so this is the bandage that I've used to cover it up. And Monica didn't really ask questions around what made you feel like she was better than you, what kind of conversations were you guys having in therapy after you had therapy, what have you learned from therapy. These are kinds of questions that naturally, if someone has healed from this event or this mistake that they've made, if they've healed from it, they tend to have these questions answered like on lock. They know what exactly they need to say. But if it's a bandage, sometimes it's like, oh, but I went to therapy, so like that's been cleared up, we've dealt with that issue, and it's kind of dismissive in that sense. So I think if someone does tell you that they're cheating, kind of hear them out, try and figure out the thinking behind all those things and why those things came up. And we had this same issue with Freddie and Catherine in the UK season. So I think cheating is a conversation people can have when they are in invested relationships, just to understand. And we also see that it was a contention for Monica because she had been cheated on before, but she has learned to forgive people who had learned to forgive people who had cheated on her. So I don't know if Stephen heard this and assumed that because she's cheated, she's forgiven people who have cheated on her in the past, she would also forgive him and he might have a second chance if that happened in the future, that he was comfortable having conversations with her around it. But I'm not too sure. That's just me speculating. It could be that. But I think that those kinds of conversations in the pods also help you to kind of remove any sort of preconceived judgments that you have around cheating by asking these questions. It was nice that he was being very transparent about it and being honest about where he was, because he wasn't straight out asked, "Are you a cheater?" He kind of came out with it and was very honest with it and kind of set the scene as, this is how it ended, this is why, and this is where I'm at. But it didn't give a depth into where he is now and what brought him to this situation. And Monica kind of enables that behavior by one, saying that she's forgiven the people that have done it before, and also kind of saying like, but you've learnt from it, so it's okay. But he didn't say anything about the lessons that he's learnt from it, so that was kind of an assumption that she had made from that situation, which I'm sure now we watch back and we see it and we're like, oh, actually there were signs that he felt less than with her. And considering that was the breakdown of his last relationship, was Monica enabling that feeling in him again of less than, or I'm not enough in this relationship, because of what she was doing and saying and her behavior around him, that made him kind of self-sabotage in a way. And I think this is the same pattern that he had in his last relationship by self-sabotaging. Instead of telling his partner how he's feeling and communicating how he feels about the relationship and where they are at, instead he does something so that she can find out that he's cheating emotionally, so that he can get out. So I'm wondering if those kinds of conversations were had throughout the episodes outside of cameras to kind of encourage that, but I don't think it was, because it sounds like it was back into his old pattern of self-sabotage so I can get out, rather than having the difficult conversations. So if he had the difficult conversation and said, do you know what, Monica, I feel like I'm not good enough for you, and have that open conversation with her and give like things about it, because he talks a lot but he doesn't fill in, like give depth to those conversations. It's a lot of talking and a lot of detail, but doesn't really go into how he feels about things. It's very surface factual stuff, like this and then this and then this and then this and then this, but it's not how he's feeling about something. And we see this play out when they do get to the honeymoon, and we see him kind of a little confused around like the gifts thing. We see that they go out for lunch and she's asking for like the gifts, and his level of gift giving is more about like something that needs to last, something that needs to be tangible, whereas hers is kind of like high-end luxury stuff. And we could see that those two things kind of clash, so there's no real understanding of where her love is. And I think for Monica, a lot of her understanding of love comes from what people do for her, so either acts of service or words of affirmations, but she needs to be validated in those ways. And I feel like she has a standard that she feels like that person needs to meet her at, which you can have a standard, but you need to be dating the people who can meet those standards, rather than dating someone who isn't up to that standard, which we see that she does say in her confessionals that she used to go for guys who had this and this and this and this, but the character wasn't there. But she's gonna let go of all of those pretentious things and like actually accept that this person has a character that she actually enjoys being around, which is fine. But you also have to drop the expectations that this person is also going to meet up to those kinds of materialistic standards that she would have preferred in her previous dating life. So it's trying to work out which one is more valuable to you, and if that is what your most valuable thing is, you stick with it and you find someone with character that would also match that. But it's being honest with yourself, and I think for a minute she wasn't very honest with herself when it came to the lifestyle that she wanted. So I think that's where a little bit of a disalignment happened. And also throughout the show we see Stephen giving a sense of high arousal and sex. He compliments her on her body numerous times throughout the honeymoon. He's always talking about his erection on the honeymoon, and she's also playing along with it with him in the beginning. So I feel like he has a very high sex drive, which probably could have been explored a little bit more in the pods with Monica. But I think the reason he doesn't do that is because he wants to give off the impression that he's not a sleazebag or someone who is only here for sex. But we see that he has a high sex drive, and we also see that their blueprints might be different, their sexual blueprints might be different, but trying to explore those things needs to be understood throughout the show. And I think even throughout the show in other couples we see this kind of incompatibility creeping throughout the series. But I think that's also another conversation for another time. But I think in this particular couple, it was very heightened on Stephen's side, and I think that is because his level of emotional expressiveness isn't really high, so he tends to use physical intimacy in order to replace some of the emotional intimacy that he needs to fill in. And I think at some point Monica understood that was his way of being intimate, was only sexually intimate, but the emotional intimacy wasn't really developed between the two of them, even though in the pods that's what it's for. I think a lot of the time some people use the pods to kind of tick boxes as to what kind of person they want. We could see Monica was asking all the questions, so she knew a little bit more about Stephen's character, whereas Stephen, because he was doing most of the talking, we didn't see much of the conversation coming from her end on how she felt about things. And she was very vague when it came to even the cheating conversation in the pods that they had. The conversation, she just said it was a very, very, very bad experience, but she didn't go into depth, from what we see anyway. She didn't go into depth about the cheating and how it affected her or how it looked for her. We just see a surface level, and when you do see that surface level, you're made to think, oh, is there something else that we should be asking? Is there something else I need to be more curious about? But I think she just assumed he was curious because he went out to buy books about his unknown heritage when he found out his heritage. So I think she just assumed that curiosity would follow through into their relationship, but didn't really ask questions about what interested him in those books and what kind of made him want to do that. but wasn't really asking questions about her and her history and things like that. So I think when you look back, you can see that Stephen was doing a lot of talking, but not a lot of not emotionally connecting either. So I think that's where the kind of gap happens between their relationship. And I think the pressure was put onto Stephen when he wasn't doing the romantic things like going to watch the fireworks or buying her flowers every time he asked. Those little things started to get to Monica, and I think she was also comparing herself to other couples and what they were doing, so it kind of also put a lot of pressure. And she was very she spoke very much down to him. She didn't really kind of give him space. She kind of always commanded the space, but I think this is because in his head he tends to work in a space where he feels like she's better than me, or I'm punching, or I don't know what kind of fear there is, but there was a fear that he had, and even Monica pointed it out in the honeymoons about, oh, he's scared of me. And I think for there to be love in a relationship, there shouldn't be that fear. There should be an openness, a willingness to have the difficult conversations without fear of judgment or ridiculed. So I think those kinds of things started to brew from the honeymoon. And when we come into real life and she's always asking for flowers, he feels like our ideas of lifestyle are completely different, and that needs to be worked out over time, which they don't have time. They only have 4 weeks from pods to wedding day. So to them, it's not enough. To him, it's not enough time. And he does express that he feels a little bit overwhelmed, like he's not enough, when they are on the honeymoon and she's talking about the flowers. So it's kind of like you see him trying to backtrack, but because Monica kind of jumps on it and kind of like tries to kind of secure him again, I feel like the way she secured him didn't make him feel at ease. It felt more like pressure. So he realized actually that the only other way I know how to get out of this is by cheating and getting out of this situation. So with this couple, it's very obvious that they had different lifestyle goals, firstly, and also the emotional intimacy wasn't on the same level, but they expressed love differently. Monica's way of giving love is the physical. She's very much, I don't mind giving physical love and affection in that way, but also withdrawing it if she didn't feel like she was getting her needs met. And the way she receives love is with flowers, words of affirmations, acts of service, and she knows those things quite obviously because she mentions it straight up to him. Whereas with Stephen, we don't see that understanding of himself and how he shows love, other than physical attraction. And he's not very adverse to his own emotional needs, I think. So when those things happen, he doesn't know how to express himself in a way that could help him bridge the gap between him and Monica when it comes to emotions. So he feels very much under pressure and feels like he has to act up to what she wants, rather than being very open and honest as to where he is and where he is at. So this couple was a very interesting couple to watch, and I would love to hear more about their relationships after watching some videos, because I know Monica's done a video and so has Stephen. He's like done a statement or something on his Instagram, so I would love to read more about those and find out more. And also like see how they react and see how they react in the reunion, because I feel like that's another thing that we could see where they're at now. I know when they did meet at the mixer with the other couples, Monica was there but Stephen wasn't, and she did mention that they had a conversation, and in that conversation they've kind of let things be bygones. They're never going to date again, but at least they've had the conversation. She's forgiven him, everything's cool, and they're in a good space. So from that couple we see how sexual compatibility and emotional compatibility are not the same thing, and sometimes getting clarity on those things would be helpful, and understanding your sexual blueprint also can be very helpful in your relationships. I think I'd put a list of sexual blueprints names so that you guys can like look into it and see what it means. I think I did do a post on Instagram about it, so I would definitely post that in there as well so you guys can see. But it's one of understanding your own blueprint and understanding your partner's blueprint and where you guys both need to be met sexually, as well as also emotionally and where you're at emotionally. I think if Stephen had understood his love languages a little bit more, there might have been a little bit more encouragement, because I think he probably needed a few more words of affirmations when he was doing good things, because we do see Monica praising him outside of the relationship, but when it comes to just the two of them, the only time I see her actually praising him in the relationship is if she feels like he's kind of switching off, then she kind of puts in some more words of affirmation to kind of fill in the gaps. But it's been from the beginning of the show, we knew that his wound was, I'm not good enough. But I don't think Monica really internalized that and used that to kind of guide and help the relationship whilst they were on the honeymoon. So I think that kind of was the downfall of this relationship, because there was a lot of criticism, which when your love language is words of affirmation and you are getting criticized a lot, it hurts so much more when those things aren't being reciprocated. And then when you have your other love language being physical touch, and then someone withholding sex from you is also taken away, it feels like you're not receiving any deposits in your love tank, but you are pouring out a lot of things. For example, he went to do the workshop with the flowers because she said she liked flowers, so he ended up like putting together a workshop around those things, and trying to do acts of service by cleaning the house and stuff like this. So we see him trying, but he feels like he's not getting anything back because his words of affirmation and his physical touch have both been on like hold. So it's kind of like, I can't give anything I'm not receiving. And from then on, the relationship dynamic starts to spiral. So yeah, I can't wait to see how this plays out in the reunion and how they kind of work through this. But it's a very interesting dynamic that they have set up, and it kind of gives room for us to learn more about sexual intimacy and emotional intimacy, which I cannot wait to have more conversations around. If you guys have any questions around those topics, please feel free to put them in the comments and we can have a conversation about that. And that, I'm going to end this video here, so stay tuned, and I look forward to doing more Love is Blind content with you. So take care and have a lovely evening, guys. Bye.